Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Iblis Manifestations podcast. This channel features lengthy off-limits conversations with various different artists and entrepreneurs, predominantly from the underground metal scene. We take deep dives into the topics of life, music, spirituality, and take insight from a variety of thought-provoking perspectives from personalities who you don't often hear from in a mainstream settings. I am your host, Cheyenne, and I was originally born and raised in Iran and currently reside in the UK. I am the frontman and founding member of the black death metal band TRIVAX, who have been active since 2009. The band originally started in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where such type of music is banned as well as a punishable offense. You can check the band's pages for any updates on tour dates as well as new music. I am also a personal trainer and an online fitness coach who specializes in people achieving the best versions of themselves physically and mentally. Having been someone who was once extremely out of shape and overweight, I find it to be my duty to be able to pass on the information and knowledge which I've gained to help others achieve the same transformation. The Iblis Manifestations podcast also features a variety of solo episodes where I discuss personal experiences and anecdotes in a very candid fashion, covering everything from mental health, spirituality, philosophy, and even paranormal experiences. This is the Iblis Manifestations podcast. To support it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and visit the link in the descriptions.
It's great talking to you, Cheyenne, really. And best of luck to your endeavors with this podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
You're my favorite person to talk to for interviews and stuff. So I love what you're espousing out here. I love the knowledge and the perspectives that you're curating through this, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
As I told you, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever had, because we talk a lot more things than just music, and I really appreciated that.
I respect you deeply, and it's an honor to be here.
And friends, remember as always, better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Enjoy the podcast. Okay, so it's with an absolute honor and a privilege to have none other than Mr. Necrobutcher, aka Joern Stubberud, on Iblis Manifestations. Sir, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Thank you. Doing fine. Getting ready to do some promotion for, I guess, our 40-year anniversary gigs coming up in the US.
That's amazing, man. So I think I got to have a little bit of a taster of that because I got to see you guys in Bergen at Beyond the Gates. And I know you were kind of doing some version of that. And the set was absolutely fucking mind-blowing, man. You know, I mean, it was a borderline psychedelic experience. I mean, what can you tell us about this 40-year anniversary package you got coming up?
Yeah. So 2024 we turned 40, and then idea was to try to put together a show to celebrate it with the fans, and since we are like 40. Then the idea was to touch in on all the albums, like a musical journey from 1984 until today. It turned out to be a couple of hours, so it's a approximately 2 hours production. We have made a special video that we project on these huge LED screens. That are also the history of the band, linked up with the songs we have chosen to play.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's kind of a musical journey. The show you saw in Norway was the third time we did the 40-year anniversary. We had the 2 shows in Oslo first, and we had some special guests, some old members.
That's right.
Kjetil Monheim, my first drummer on drums, and my first vocalist, Billy Messiah.
Yeah, no, I you know what? I feel honored and privileged to have been able to see it, man. And I think that, it's one of those things. There's so much, obviously, history in those 40 years. And there are actually a couple of moments, with obviously each song that you play has got its own graphics and imagery that gets portrayed behind you guys on the massive screen. It's actually quite an impressive production to have. But there are moments, actually, that, I kind of felt emotional because obviously there's the nostalgia attached to them, and then you've got your own personal things, but then it's kind of like, oh, yeah, shit. There's a lot behind a lot of these songs. There's a lot of things that obviously either happened over the years, and it's obviously also how they've aged as well and how they kind of manifest into, today's world in 2024. It's quite a special vibe, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And of course, what you're talking about, that's very individual. Obviously, everybody is different, has different opinion on which albums are best or what they like for some reason. So, but if you're a Mayhem fan, or have been at some point, it's it's a cool thing to see. I mean, we can't obviously perform all these songs all the time, so this is a kind of a one-off thing to gather all these songs together and then do this massive production.
Yeah,
but I guess that, okay, let's say we survive 9 more years and it will have the 50-year anniversary. So I wouldn't say never, but I mean, that we do this kind of thing again, I don't know. So would be worth seeing it. Just like the Mysterious, when we took that on the road.
Mm-hmm.
That was also a one-off thing. That we played the whole thing in its entirety. Did you see that show, by the way?
The Mysteries shows, yeah, man, yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I would have gone to the one you had in London, I'm going to say. If I'm not mistaken. I think was it the Electric Ballroom that you guys played?
That's could be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was already very special, man. Just seeing a lot of those songs. And obviously, I know that you kind of altered the sound and the stage production so that it would kind of replicate the sound. And then obviously you did the live album for it. And it was fucking cool. And what I was particularly kind of, one of the things that actually, you were mentioning that people obviously have different opinions about different albums and stuff, generally as a music listener, I like to listen to bands and kind of take it for what it is, and then you can obviously have your preferences. But I think in the case of Mayhem, I think a lot of your albums are so different from different time periods and then obviously different events in between them. So you kind of, I think that it's better to just take it for what it is rather than just say, oh yeah, this one's my favorite or that one's my favorite. I think it's better to just kind of view it as an art piece and a piece of time, really.
It's many reasons why they are very different. First of all, one of the things which I actually appreciate about our catalog and the diversity of it is that it takes so many years between every time we release an album
That's right.
that we develop as songwriters and stuff. Plus, we are inspired by different things, and sometimes we have even changed songwriters on the way.
Mm-hmm.
3-4 times during the 4 years. So obviously it's going to sound differently, and some members changed out over the years, also changed some things, but everything is, like you said, it's like it's a monument of the time, like, because it spawns so many years now. So like the 87 release, for example, I mean the 80s,
Yeah,
that was a completely different time than the 90s, and then the 2000. Now the 2020 is different again. So it's crazy to think about how time has flown past. Like 40 years was like swoosh, but that when you start to go into it and think about it, it's a fucking long time. It is. So but I never, like, sometimes there's a question I get a lot in different occasions. Let's say we win some awards, or we have some achievement or something, and reporters come up and say, and that this is very often a question I get. You didn't expect this to happen when you started in 1984. But actually, the truth is that I expected this plus 10 times more, and then much sooner. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that's not, and that's the truth, because I think that in order to succeed, you have to be very passionate about it, especially if you go into something which is not going to be any financially rewarding for many, many years, and you have to put in thousands of hours into the project before you even yield any money and shit, and what you have to sacrifice in between. Many people are not ready to do that, because this is not like a one-hit wonder type of music. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it takes the sacrifice, but also I think that the passion and the ambition that you have, it actually shows through. I think you personally, it's something that I've always seen that from you, from interviews from various years. And I think the thing is that when it comes to Mayhem, Mayhem is not a normal band. It's not even a band. It's like an entity. It's a cultural entity, and maybe even more than that. I don't think you can just compare it to any other band that just wants to become, I don't know, successful and famous,
Yeah. No, yeah, this band became a lot of different things at the same time for a lot of different reasons, and for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I can only speak for myself, obviously. But there is people who are saying that they are inspired by us to do whatever they do. If it's music, could be also different types of art. And of course, I only have the word for it, and what that really mean towards what they did. Like they can only, like, who knows? But I start to accept it, that there's a lot of people who, for some reason, have found something in this band, and either got inspired and did something themselves, or was just I don't know, liked it for some other reason.
But you want to talk about inspiration, man. Look at this text behind me, okay? True Iranian black metal.
Yeah.
And that's an homage to you guys that we did, okay? So, going back to TRIVAX back in Iran, the very first show that we played, which was an illegal live show at the Kamal ul Mulk High School, we weren't supposed to be playing metal there to begin with. Halfway through the show, we started fucking ripping out Funeral Fog, okay? Because that's what we wanted to play, and that's in the Islamic Republic. So your inspiration goes far and wide, and I'm only just mentioning my own personal example of it, really.
And that's a very strong thing, like that we have inspired, like revolutionary thoughts in the second, also countries like yourself, which is not like a normal democratic country as we know it. I know one of your fellow countrymen that also had to flee the country. He's a political refugee here in Norway now.
Is that Nikon by any chance?
Yeah,
Nikon from Confess? Yeah, he's a friend of mine, actually.
Correct.
Yeah, he's been on this podcast too. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I met him a couple of times, and his band opened up for us one time.
That's right. Yeah. That's cool, man.
Yeah. So, okay. So he told me his story. So I guess if it's similar to yours, it's a pretty strong story.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, him and I, we actually come from the same city. Unfortunately, he actually got arrested. I somehow miraculously managed to fucking get away, but nevertheless, I think that the common thing of it is just the passion that we have for this music. I mean, my introduction to black metal, I would say, was The Mysteries. And I remember I was 14 years old at the back of a car during a family trip, and then I heard it on my Walkman through headphones, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And then it was game over from there. I've never looked back since. And
it's a special, I mean, when that album came out, the production on it is unlike anything else before that album. Nothing has sounded like that before. So it was a lot of things came together by some of it coincidence. The choice of the studio and all of these things. And also the fact that, like we all know that Pelle died during the, while we were working on the album. And then Attila stepped in. And, and what a surprise that was, a vocal, so nobody has heard anything like that, especially with this kind of music. So, I understand that when people heard that, they were thinking, "What the fuck is this?" I can get it. I had similar experiences myself. For example, with first time I heard Celtic Frost, I was in a record store in Oslo. I had this round I always did when I was young. Went into Oslo, and then there was like 5-6 record stores, and went to all of them, like once a week, let's say, to see if they have anything new on the import, because all the stuff that was on license here in Norway, how it worked was that there was different record stores, some small, like very small, and like selling used records as well, and some like this in a fancy shopping mall, like different type of, but we went through them all, and they all had at that time an own section for import. And that was up to the clerk, basically, or the people who were handling the inventory, who was buying the records to sell. So, it was very random what kind of music. People probably ordered by the name. I don't fuck knows.
Mm-hmm.
You have a record shop, and then you want to have the newest thing, obviously, the newest records from all the, and then I don't know if it's probably impossible to be into all the type of music at the same time, even if you love music.
Sure.
So anyway, there was a lot of weird records there. So one day I found this Celtic Frost album. Of course, it just stuck out immediately with the hectagram, with the dead head inside, the swords and all this. Looked on the back, the photos look fucking cool, the band members and shit. I had heard, also, actually, I had the Hellhammer demo, but I didn't even connect it with that album for some reason.
All right, okay.
No, how was that? Wait a minute. No, sorry. I got that demo later. So I'm at the store, I'm going to, and at that time you can hear the records.
Mm-hmm.
There was a service that you can listen to with the headphones inside of the store. So they put it on, and I'm like, told the clerk, saying that this must be the wrong tempo, because it was like so down tuned.
Right.
So I asked them to put it on the 45, which I understood immediately was wrong. So it was so unbelievably heavy that I couldn't even believe that it was on the right R&B. So that was a weird thing. Other times where we got to know new music was through some mail orders that they had categorized what in their own. They came up with their own names, like speed metal, hard metal, So we were just going by the names. So I remember one time there was a company called Zip. I think they were from Sweden. So at that bunch, I ordered the Voivod War and Pain, the Bulldozer, the first album was a Day of Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody's fucking calling me. Day of Wrath, yes, and that was also the same experience. I put on the Voivod album. I couldn't believe it. It was like it was so much going on. It was so kind of noisy and so much chaos going on, but at the same time, I heard that it was a structure. But the first time you heard it, you couldn't grasp it. You need to hear it several times to order to to understand where the like the traditional build up, the opening verse, chorus, and so on. Unbelievable.
Well, that's how I felt about your stuff the first time I heard it. It took a few goes to actually really understand what was going on. At first it was just pure fascination, and then when you understand it better, then it's even more fascination almost.
Yeah. This is the thing about this music is very complex. So you have to have a trained ear. You need to know. You need to have listening points and stuff to understand what's going on. First of all, you have to be able to separate the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to separate. And then everything in this kind of music is also distorted. Even sometimes the vocals are distorted, the bass is distorted, everything is distorted at the same time. So it's kind of. So when people who don't know anything ask me about the music, and I understand that they don't get it, but they are maybe know some finer arts. So I like to compare it to opera. Now, you don't get anything out of an opera if you don't know what the opera is about. Preferably, maybe you would even have to know Italian, because that's most of the great operas is from. And you need to know your listening points. Otherwise, you wouldn't understand shit what was going on. And then some people got it, and it's like, wow, oh yeah, okay, now we got it. We still don't get it, but we understand that it's complex now. It's not just noise, So yeah, it's a lot of things going on, and also at the high tempo as well.
Of course, yeah.
So to add to everything. So of course. And another thing I want to tie before we end that is that
yeah, please.
What I was going to say. Yes, sometimes over the years, because I like it to be simple myself. I don't like to be puzzled. I like to get it immediately, and I want it to be simple, so I can get it. Get like a groove going. And something some catchy stuff.
Sure.
But that's not challenging for your brain. So that catchy stuff, when you heard it a couple of times, it gets boring. Now, the other way around, with our music, the complexity of it is that you have to actually, first of all, to be able to enjoy it, you have to take the time and dedicate yourself to listen to it several times before you get it. And just that dedication to understand it, that's a lot to ask for a fucking music interest. Also, for some people who just listen to music in general, like it's a lot to ask. And sometimes when I think to myself over the years that we have some guitarists that we had that made some very intricate things, and nothing is 2x4, it's a half second out all the time. It's a half note. It's down tuned. Everything is to make it more complicated all the time. So, so sometimes I think to myself, like, this is like I hope we get away with this time too, like, because this is like a fucking challenge to people.
Yeah.
Like when we arrived with this Order at KO album, for example. I mean, I thought to myself, like, Jesus Christ, this is... On top of everything, it's ugly as well. It was so fucking ugly.
Yeah.
On every level. Even the artwork is just like rust brown, dirty, colors. It fitted really good with the production and but it was madness at that time. It was madness in the band. And this is the cool thing about the band too. When I listen to Mayhem albums myself, I don't listen to the track necessarily. It brings me back to when we were making these songs and what kind of shape we were in, what kind of relations we had with each other and shit. And of course, you don't remember the good days because those were smooth and just washed away. But all the problems that occurred and shit, those you remember, So of course, just think back to some of the stuff. Especially, like, some of the years, we were very fucking angry. Angry guys. Especially after when the shit happened in the beginning of the 90s.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of the thing, you know, and had lost 2 friends, also colleagues. Now you can say that I was a little bit out on the outside then, but you know, that was because of Pelle, you know, his suicide. I couldn't fucking function for a year almost, you know? And 1 year later, boom.
Understandable as well, man. And you were all very young too.
Dead, and then we carried on, you know. We just had to fucking get my head around. Anyway, so when we came up with that Wolfler Abyss, the aggressivity we had towards, because we were not only that, I thought, since I was in the middle of the thing, that we were the victims, you know. We had this loss, but people were treating us like criminals, and the industry didn't want us back, and a lot of our old friends also turned back on us, and a lot of fellow musicians that knew us tried to distance themselves immediately, because of course the media frenzy in the beginning of the 90s was big, and of course like bands like Creator and shit, when the press called them, you know, and said, you know, these Mayhem guys, you know, they were like, no, they're terrible people. You know what I mean? So, and I understand why people had to say that, you know, because, you know, like the stuff that was happening was terrible. But I mean, nobody spoke up for us in that other sense. So, and then the papers here in Norway was like fucking hammering us, and also the foreign press. And when we started to try to get some gigs again in '96 and stuff, we were fucking banned.
Right.
And that's a funny story, actually. That was our comeback. 1996, we were going to play a festival in Oslo, signed the contract and everything. They announced a gig. Then it was city council called the festival and said, you know what, we have put £75,000 into this project, also over the county money that they have given this festival. But if Mayhem was to play, that they wouldn't pay that money, like a threat to the festival. So the festival called me, didn't say that I found out that later, but said some other bullshit. And then they were very sorry and shit, and they wanted to know if I could sign a paper that they gave us 10,000 crowns, and then sign the paper saying that we wouldn't sue them, because our fee was, you know, much more than that. But so it turns out this city council, before he was a politician, became into politics, he was a priest.
Oh, there you go.
Taking this personally, you know, like, oh shit, you know, this band is not on my watch, you know. But when you look at that, in afterwards, you know, it was worth it, in the sense that I can tell this story now, and we were mad at the time, obviously, but now we are the only band in Norway that has ever been banned to play a concert. It's like, I feel like fucking Sex Pistols, you know. It's on those levels, you know. Like I know some bands like was completely outrageous, like Wasp. They also had some canceled shows and some Christian groups and shit after them. You know, it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, so that was a long fucking story. But point is, you can hear it in the music, what is going on with the band. And at that time, we were so fucking aggressive. So we recorded the album. We had a budget. and recorded the album in. It's a guy I know. He plays in a band called TNT in Norway. Ronny Teker is one of the best guitarists in Norway. So he has a studio called Studio. So recorded it there, and then came back to Oslo. And before we're gonna send off the tape to the pressing plant, we listened to it and just discovered that, you know what, we had recorded the songs too fast.
Right.
So we had to try to slow ourselves. We went to a different studio and then try to slow ourselves down, try to, because we were too tense. We didn't even know, like it was so fast that the melodic parts in between were just lost. You know what I mean?
So, you're talking about Wolfslayer Abyss, right?
Yeah. Wolfslayer Abyss. Yeah. And I can tell you some stories about every album in that sense, but that goes into, that All Red KO. That was, that was fucking madness at that time.
I was especially impressed that you did end up playing Illuminate Eliminate on the show that I watched, and it was very impressive, both to listen to but also to watch as well. Again, like we said, with all the visuals and everything you had going on, it's quite I think Order at Kea, just sonically speaking, is probably one of your darkest, or like you said, ugliest albums I think that you've ever done.
I can say that what Blasphemer said after the album, I think that fits very well, really. That he said that this was where he this was it. There was nowhere to go after this. Right, this was the most like with this kind of music that he was like he started with the Wolfslayer, then Gran, and then Chimera, and now this Order. It was like you go into a specific type of music, and then you go to where you meet the end, because there's nowhere to go. It's just like where to go from there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you peaked.
So he felt so empty, and that's why he just quit also. He was like, no, I'm finished with the whole thing. He actually told me that he was going to step away from playing aggressive metal altogether at that time. Yeah. And I believe he did too. I think he started a band. What was the name? Ava Inferi. With his,
yes. Yeah. I do know the band.
Yeah. So completely different thing altogether. So, yeah. But of course, we were, that was just a setback. It's always a setback when we have to change out members. So, but of course, I mean, we fucking couldn't fucking just retire at that time, but it looked very bleak at that time. Basically, what happened, just called around some friends and just asked if anybody, know anybody that could be interested to play in Mayhem. Like we just had to get out on the road immediately after he left. So we hired two guys, one from a band called Limbordic Art, and a French guy.
That's right. Yep.
Called Shocky. Just immediately when after he left, we were just like, fuck it. Booked a South American tour and took the new chaps and left. That was before Chucky. We just had this Limbordic Art guy. Went over to South America, and this fucking... It was a hard way back. And we changed out both of those guys. We had Telok on the, on the list. He was I think he was the first guy that Hellhammer called but he was in Gorgoroth at the time,
Hmm.
and said that he was obligated. He had his obligations there. So a year later or something, he calls and says, "Now I'm ready." But I thought to myself, like, "Now you're ready?" No.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what the fuck? But no, he's a. Anyway, so like when he came on, of course that was the right choice. And then was it a year later or 2 years later we found Charles. We went through a bunch of others, but they never never did it in live or anything with them. So
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then so I think we have the same lineup now for 13 years, is it?
Well, I remember the first time that I ever saw you. So I moved out of Iran towards the end of 2011. So the first time I finally got to see you guys was at Bloodstock 2012. And that's when you did have both Telek and Charles on the guitars. And I think
2011. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's around that time, 2011, 12. Yeah. Or in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if that might have even been Charles's first gig with you in the UK, like in general, because that was August 2012. So I don't know if that rings a bell at all.
I think it was it could be his second. I think his first gig was in Spain on a festival called Primavera.
Good memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting, man.
Yeah, no, I had a bad day there, but not on the show, but the day before.
Right.
They had this bargain on the plane that you could buy 2 bottles of wine for the price of 1, but they were like big bottles.
Right.
So for some reason, I ended up drinking 2 bottles of wine in the plane. Lost my phone in the plane, obviously, because I had it with me when I went in. And when I went out again, I didn't find it. They didn't allow me into the plane again. And that's where the bad day started. So in the car to the hotel, Jan Hellhammer had bought some whiskey in the tax-free that we was, drinking a bottle of whiskey there. So I arrived at the hotel. I actually just collapsed outside there. And I woke up in a room which was not mine. I didn't understand shit, and I managed to smash the TV there. And that was very funny because at the time my TV was starting to crap up, and have been looking for the right TV to buy this new big ass flat screen,
Right.
And looking at different models, which is a good buy, and shit for a long time, thinking, no, that's too expensive and shit. And here I go to Spain, smash a fucking TV there. Quite accident, really. But
sure.
Big ass flat screen. 500 euros.
Ouch.
So it's like, Jesus Christ, what's the reason of living? Jesus.
Pure fucking mayhem, eh?
Unbelievable. But I don't drink that much these days. That was an accident. I got mad because I lost the phone. So it was like stupid things that happened. So I was kind of drinking because you should never drink alcohol when you're mad.
I think that's it. Yeah. Well, I actually, I completely quit drinking alcohol, but I'd still do psychedelics once a year, But I appreciate your advice there. And the thing is as well, that people got to keep in mind, when you drink on a plane, it fucking gets to your system way quicker than it would do in normal circumstances. So there's that to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, there's something with that. I have tried to, like especially overseas flights and stuff, like the idea of getting as drunk as possible as soon as possible. Getting drunk as soon as possible and then pass out and then sleep and wake up, feeling great in New York. But that never happens. You know, you get shit-faced and then you can't sleep, and then you get to New York, you're in the immigration there and you're shit-faced. That's never good.
Yeah.
Plus you haven't slept, you know. Plus I haven't slept because it's always an early flight. I don't even, you know, I don't live at the airport, you know. So just the logistics to get there in the morning, and then of course the stress. So I never sleep before I leave on tours, because I never sleep the day before anyway. So it's
is that just the stress and the anticipation of everything that's about to go down and the logistics, or what is it?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things, I think. But first of all, it's my insomnia.
Right.
Because, I like, for example, tonight I slept 15 minutes in the end before I had to get up. 15 minutes before I opened this call.
So one thing that you were saying a minute ago, that kind of, you know, you were talking about it, and it kind of stuck with me, is when you were talking about, I guess, the Wolf's Lair Abyss kind of era of the band, where you were saying that you were victims. And I'll be honest with you, of all the years I've known Mayhem and I've followed the story, I never quite looked at it from that angle. But the truth of the matter is that you had obviously just suffered a severe loss. And some of it, if not probably like a lot of it, probably you weren't even necessarily responsible for personally. But you were still ambitious, and you were still wanting to keep the story of the band going and make something of it. So to then have that kind of, like you put it, the sort of almost backlash just because of how notorious these events had gotten, and how you were associated with them, that must have been a difficult place to be in I guess 95, 96.
It was an extreme situation. But you know, that fueled the thing also. So what happened is, like, in 1990, also in 1993, basically just the day after Øystein's funeral, because I met up with the Hellhammer in the funeral, we decided to go on, and he said that, well, maybe we should call Black, what do you call himself, Blackthorn, the guy from Thorns, you know. But we didn't know that he was, you know, later on going to be arrested and sentenced to 7 years in jail.
Yeah,
you know, at that time. But he also mentioned blasphemer. He said to me, like, you know, I know a guy. He's a young guy. He's got huge potential, but he trashed our rehearsal place. So I don't know if he's, you know, if he's crazy or what's up with that guy, you know.
Right.
So that was a fact, actually. Him and another guy who went to our rehearsal place and smashed things up in there. For some reason.
Yeah.
I thought that was fucking crazy. Anyway, so decided also at that, and also half year before Øystein's death, I got this weird call from Maniac, of all people. I hadn't heard anything from him for a couple of years at that time. Because when he dropped out in 87, I thought that was it, you know, never going to see the guy again, actually.
Yeah, right.
After February, also after the recording session in February 87. So this is in 1993. So suddenly out of the blue, calls me, and then he's living not far from where I live. In this, it's a school. We call it Folkehøyskole. It's a kind of school. It's a dormitory school, so you live there. And the studies are the non-conventional, like photography, some weird thing. Not sure it was video or was it? I'm not sure. Anyway, so he had teamed up with the guy there, and they have an assignment that they were going to record something there, because there was also this sound line, there was a light engineer line, and stuff like that. It was a kind of musical different things. And then they asked me to come over to play some bass guitar, and they called the project for Wounds. It never was released. It's actually pretty fucking cool. We released a 4-song demo at the time in a very limited edition, and was never signed, and I never bothered to reissue it. So maybe at some point we'll let it out. But,
that would be cool.
But anyway, so I came in there, we did the thing, and then I was actually surprised at how well Maniac had developed as a song, as a singer, because it was very primitive in 86, 87. So I told Hellhammer that makes sense, I'm in a band with Maniac now, he sings better than ever, and he's close to home, he's family, Mayhem family. So he's tried to keep it, like that. And then it took a year before Blasphemer arrived down to the rehearsal place, and then also Maniac there. And I told myself, like, if it feels right, we might have something, to. But it was like I was a little bit in doubt to see how it would sound. Of course, Blasphemer know all the Mysterious and the Deathcore songs already, so you started, and immediately we started just looking over at Jan. We were just like, "Fuck, it's on. We're back," And then from that time, we were in the rehearsal place for 3 years almost. Didn't play any gigs. Didn't do anything else but hanging at the rehearsal place. And it was a block behind the famous bar in Oslo called Elm Street. So we were rehearsing in the, and then down at the bar, and for 4 years there until we were ready. And we were so impatient that we were not even want to wait to get 3 more songs and release an album. We just released the EP. Fuck it, We just had to get it out there and get back on the road. But after that, we are more like a traditional band. You release an album, you go on a world tour, and then repeat it. Except we have never been a band that's structured enough to release an album every year, which is the great thing about us. Because what I also think about some other bands is some of their albums sounds the same because they're written in the same time period. And maybe some of the songwriters have reached the end of, the good ideas in that kind of music. That direction is already used. At least the first ideas that came to mind, which is always the best. And if you start to try to force something else out, it's going to be crap.
Well, actually, one of the best things that I think you guys have always done, and I'm sure that there's some hardcore Mayhem fan out there who will disagree with me. I consider myself a hardcore fan, but what I would say is that one of the best things you ever did is you didn't try to replicate yourself, and every album is essentially a reinvention of the band. Like you said, either with different songwriters, with a different approach, but I think if you kept trying to replicate the Mysteries, hypothetically speaking, I just don't think it probably would have worked, because there's so many different stars that align for that one, but then it was the same for Wolfslayer and everything, and it would just be, I think, almost like a disservice to your own creative expression if you were trying to repeat yourself.
But here's the cool thing about us, is that we are so honest. and can't hide it. So we would be. It's just the fact that 5 years go by. We even have one that was 7 years in between. It's just the fact that so many years go by, and then we. So it's not like, even if we wanted to make a new records and sounding like the old one, which was a hit, or other people liked and tried to reproduce it, we wouldn't first of all, we wouldn't be able to do it, and second of all, it was never even in our mind at any point in our career, and looked back on the last album and thought, let's make something similar to that. We never even, we were on a completely different place every time we were ready to go to the studio in our career. So That's why they just sound completely different. But of course, I mean, there is some similarities, obviously. It's in the same vein of music. It's in this extreme type of music, and the instruments, our personal choice of instruments and stuff also has something to do with the sound, obviously. The way we play our instruments, so some of the things you can't change that much. Of course, you get maybe more technically better and stuff like that, and then maybe even that you can have the chance to have a little bit more professional studio, like when we discovered that coming to one of the best studios in Norway to record the Grand Declaration of War. That was also very criticized when it came out, because that was also completely new. I had not heard anything like that also when I heard that. Heard back the recording afterwards. It was, and a lot of people didn't get it. But that was because it was just too much for people. And but after that, that is, I think, after the Mysterious and Death Crush, our bestseller up to date.
Absolutely. But what's cool is that with A Grand Declaration, it's such a unique album, but it's also just completely absurd. Like, for example, I really like that you did the sort of like the remix, if you will, so you kind of did release that kind of like newer version of it later on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, we sometimes, or most of the times, we have did a pre-recording in a, let's say, a cheaper studio, because we didn't want to come to the studio and waste time in a very expensive studio.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we always did this pre-production first, and also to listen back ourselves to hear if something's wrong, if the tempo is wrong, or if it's, And so we went to the studio, and it was more like recorded live almost, and also without the pressure, because we're just gonna listen back to it anyway. So it was like more like, I wouldn't say sloppy, but more relaxed in that sense.
Yeah.
So it got a little bit more tense in the studio and more polished, for sure, much more polished, because of the production and the mastering and all of this shit. So this was more like the spontaneous, more like how it sounded live, which is completely different than the production. So when I listened back to it, of course, I mean, I couldn't help myself to release it.
Yeah.
You know, so I did a mastering of just to get a little bit fatter sound to it. And actually, what happened is I bought the DAT recorder, this kind of big old monster, because you know, that was the thing they did at that time. You could dip it to the board, you know, the soundboard. So I did record almost the whole Mysterious tour which was 47 gigs, by the way, in Europe.
Right.
And there was a shitloads of stuff. I mean, the Maniac was completely out of control, and he's always been. So he, and then saying that, I mean, sometimes he said and did outrageous things on stage.
Mm.
And listening back to it, I thought some of it was kind of funny, like black sense of humor, like shit went wrong and shit, but there was something with it that I thought it was kind of entertaining and cool, and definitely for the fans and stuff loved it. So I cut together this album, and the guys were listening back to it and were like, no way, absolutely not. And I was so disappointed that he didn't have any sense of humor, what the fuck? So that album could be completely different, actually. It was much longer and much cooler in that sense that I had taken more the stuff that was said in between the songs and stuff, I thought that was fun. The most fun thing of the whole thing that was cut off. But no, that sound, I mean, it's something with that recording that for me is better than the album in some sense. That's why it had to come out.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. So the very first sort of live footage of Mayhem that I ever saw, this is obviously going back to whilst I was in Iran, I got a bootleg copy of that European Legions live in Marseille, which obviously had all of your interviews and everything on there. Yeah. And obviously Hellhammer had a very different drum sound back then. And then the whole show obviously was just, and then you had a cool set list too, because you had the old stuff, but then you still had some Wolf's Lair Abyss stuff in there as well, like Symbols of Blood Swords and those kind of songs, which obviously, I think they're kind of like the rough cuts that stood out, but I think... I feel like they're always underappreciated. But just whilst we were kind of on the topic of that sort of early 2000s era of Mayhem, because you brought up A Grand Declaration, one song that always, I don't know, I guess it just kind of cracked me up, but also it has kind of a profound aspect to it as well, was the part 2 of To Daimonion, which is just, I remember the future, a new beginning of time, and then it's just 4 minutes of silence. And I think that's just great.
Well, it's we have a sense of humor, too.
Yeah,
but it's very dark, obviously. So what
was the idea behind that one? What prompted you guys to just want to have a song where you've got those 2 lines at the beginning and then it's 4 minutes of just pure silence? I mean, was there something else there that you turned the volume down, or was it just silence? What was it?
No, that was, of course, intentionally done by, deliberately. No, I must take my hat off actually for Maniac's lyrics on also the Chimera album. Some fucking great lyrics he put together there. I was very impressed myself. Actually, I didn't, like, wow, okay, like very insightful things. He was smart about it because he's a nerd, and this nerdy stuff that, when you're a nerd, you read books about it, you see documentaries about it and stuff, whatever nerdy thing you do. And then he used the nerdiest thing that he was nerdy about and then wrote about it. So, I mean, his knowledge about Nietzsche and all these things, I just put it down on paper. And then for me, who, haven't, or not that interested, let's say, looks very intricate and fucking well thought about, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, actually, in that European Legions DVD, because you've got, I guess it's a DVD, you could say, or like the live release.
Yeah, it was a VHS.
It was a VHS originally. That's right. Yeah. So In the interviews that he does for that, I don't know if you remember this or anyone listening recalls, but he actually mentions that the lyrics for the upcoming album, which at that point would have then been Chimera, he actually says that the lyrics that he's currently writing for that, this is obviously from 2001, so Chimera came out 3 years later, he already gives a heads up in that interview, says that, so the lyrics that are for this next album are basically like the best shit he's ever written. And I think he was right, you know? It is very powerful.
It was.
Yeah,
it was good. I mean, that came to be his last album. I mean, he couldn't have gone out with anything better than that. Lyric wise, very smart, put together, brilliant, really, I must say. But like, this is the normal thing, these artists, the trouble-minded people, there's always the people who make the most craziest art. And he's for sure one of them. Very special guy.
Would you say that Pelle was the same as well?
In a completely different way, obviously. But he was, if he was special, no, he was unique. There was never met anybody like that before or after. That's for sure.
What was unique about him as like compared to like, let's say, just the average person you meet? What was unique about him as an individual?
Also, he was like, his dedication for the project was completely beyond anything. It was everything, including like self-mutilation and starving, and it was well thought through, the whole fucking thing, the whole image, dead image, and it was a well thought through, and had a lot of different aspects and stuff, and so he was, I don't know, he was just like completely in the whole thing, with everything he did. Like, you would say, you have a job, or you're in a band, but you have other things on the side that interest you. For example, he didn't have that. Everything that he was into had something to do with the thing, and the thing is Mayhem, that and his stage persona dead. So everything, like, so he was like living it completely, and that's why when he probably for sure he had some psychological problems and shit, and was suicidal. And then, when you're that intense, and then you feel like nothing is happening, and then that repeats itself over a longer period of time, and then you lose hope of the future. And then when you are suicidal and stuff, and then you suddenly lose, the vision of the future, or then it's very easy to kill yourself, like he did also. So, and there's always, like, when you think about it afterwards, like, something you could have said or done, or some, and it's always like, what irritates me the most is that we were so fucking close with the Mysterious album. We were just we were just waiting. We would easily get a record deal there and get the record company to buy the studio. Now, to get the studio expenses, but we had to fucking do it ourselves, like we always had to do. And of course, we didn't have any funding, no money, so it just dragged out. And the problem with one of the problems was that Øystein was this super optimistic guy, a little bit too optimistic. So he would think out a project, and then in his mind, that project would end on this and this date, and that's when you're gonna get paid, and that's when the next project is gonna, the studio money was gonna come in. And then those dates come and went several times. I had the patience because I'm not suicidal. So, I mean, I waited it out, and but unfortunately, my friend Pelle didn't. So, it ended like that. But like you, it's that's the. So, I mean, let's think this further. Let's say we ended up in the studio and got this album out. Then it will be no need to take your own life, and then suddenly you will start to get some fans, play some gigs, and there will be more gigs, and maybe another album, and then you will be just in it,
Interesting. So you think that the success of what would have been, let's say, The Mysteries with Dead as a part of it would have. Do you think that would have, hypothetically speaking, you think that would have prevented things from going the way they went?
Absolutely. If that is a scenario that if you take that scenario, like Vikenes wouldn't be brought into the picture, for example, and then so obviously. And also the fact that, we wouldn't have to start all over again, took us 7 years to get back. So imagine what we could have done this 7 years. We already had the Deskus album from 87. We would have the, let's say we get it out in 1991. And then, who fuck knows? No, I mean, that would be the first album in that kind of music that would be, came out. Unfortunately, it was recorded, but it didn't came out before 94. If you know what I mean. But the songs were already ready in 1990, when we were touring in East Germany and shit. At least 5 of them, and, of the 8.
Yeah. It sounds to me that, I really appreciate you sharing that. That's a very, very interesting perspective, and it's, it's quite...
I have another perspective.
Yeah.
And that is that, which is always something that irritated me a lot, that Billy, when we got Billy Messiah in 1985, I thought to myself, like, if he hadn't left us at that point, we would have a jump start, many years of jump start of the whole movement, So, which means that, how it is. Unfortunately, it's like that. But the first one always gets all the credit. The rest of the bands that come after, even if they're better, the first band gets the credit. So so it's irritating that we have already made the songs and shit, but couldn't fucking release it, before years later, and that set us back. And of course, like when they have to get new people, and that set us back another 7 years. So, yeah.
So
yeah, but 5 minutes through now. So yeah.
So if I can kind of
so that's what I'm like. So we had the problem there, and then Monheim left 87. We have to find another drummer. We had another drummer a year before we found Hellhammer, and then Blasphemer left. After Blasphemer left, obviously we have these problems, but thankfully that the last lineup has lasted now for 14 years, and I think by the looks of it, we are now in the process of recording a new album. And I think we're going to have to finish off this, because we've been on 1.5 hours now. So wrap it up with the talk about a little bit about the future, how it looks for us.
Sounds absolutely fine, man. I'm excited to hear that you've got some new album stuff coming up.
So it was last summer that the two guitarists, Charles and Morten, presented some songs they had written. And this is last summer.
Right. Okay.
And I thought to myself, like 20 songs or something. So 10 of them was great, in my opinion, right away, or had the potentials. So I just imagine that these guys have been writing for another year, and we are doing some sessions now, writer sessions. So it looks really good. The new thing is also that we have two songwriters. So to say it like it's integrated, but it's the easiest way to say it is when you have two songwriters, of course there's some competition. They want their songs on the album, obviously. And of course they want to make the best songs. So I don't know if it's healthy or not, or if they feel the pressure or anything, but I mean, there's got to be some kind of pressure. At least, it's about getting paid also afterwards on the royalties and shit too.
Sure, yeah, of course.
So, and the prestige, and stuff to release songs under the Mayhem logo. And that is so fucking beneficiary for us now, because obviously we can take the best ideas from two guys instead of just one. So it kind of it secures the quality of the songs, and since I already liked it 1 year ago, I think that the potential is it's looking very good. There was some riffs I was thinking to myself, like, this is some of the best shit I ever heard. So that's looking good. So the plan is that we, of course, like, the world is too big. So the 40-year anniversary tour around the world was not able to put it into the anniversary year. So some of it leaked out into 2025. So we have to finish that. We finish out in the States in April, and there are some festival jobs in the summer. But through the summer or in the spring, we have to record the album, I think, and that will give the record company time to, with the pressing and the promotion and everything, maybe. So hopefully it will be out by the end of 2025, and then a massive world tour will start.
That sounds fucking excellent, man. Very, very, very excited to hear and see more of that. And yeah, of course, now you've got the 40-year anniversary shows to kind of go through and complete. It's very exciting, man. And you know what? And I mean this honestly. I think regardless of everything that's happened in Mayhem's past, of all the trials and tribulations and everything that you guys have been through, and of course this massive cultural landmark that you have also left behind, I am amongst those people who's very glad that you're still going, and I'm very glad that you're still kicking ass and still embracing it, man. So congratulations.
I mean, that's awesome. And I'm glad that there's enough of people that feel the same as you, so we are able to do this. Actually, you know what? This is, first of all, when you play music, you play for your temporaries.
Mm-hmm.
And that if this music reaches different generations, it's not given, let's say, that it reaches the next generation, because your parents' music didn't reach you, their parents' music didn't reach them, if you know what I mean.
Sure, yeah,
So
I understand to an extent.
so
Yeah.
it's not given that the youngsters today will pick up on this music. It's not given at all. But now when I see it, because now I can look back 4 decades, and then now we have new fans coming in, just old enough to get into the concert. So every time we come somewhere, we have a new bunch of people who were not even old enough to get into the establishments now. And so that means that we have reached out to not only our temporaries and not only one generation, but maybe 2 generations behind us actually now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even 3. I don't know how many years you count generation, but it's at least 2. So
yeah, you're probably looking at 3 there at least, actually, you know, because you've got the people who were teenagers in the 80s, and then, you know, it carries on. You've got grandkids listening to Mayhem now.
Yeah. So it's you know, there's a lot of types of music that has been popular and then has fallen and almost disappeared. Like, for example, glam rock that was big in the 80s, you know, like, and then it disappeared again, you know, like.
Sure.
But this black metal thing had, from the start in 1980, had a steady rise all the time. And now, 44 years later, it still it never tipped. It has this steady, and I don't think many other types of music have had that. And then if you look at that, I mean, just pure mathematics and you know, like, it would be strange if it didn't reach the next generation. And I think that so for somehow we have touched into something that reached, you know, to that level, you know, like, it's crazy to think about in one way that happened to us. But it did, and of course, I mean, I set out, I aimed to do it. So, you know, so it's not like I'm very surprised.
Sure.
If you know what I mean, you set out to do something, and if you achieve it, you can't be surprised that you did that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
But we're looking forward to coming to London now in was it December?
Yep, that's right.
And
that's
also
right,
Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
So and also we have some gigs in the US, Canada coming up, some in Europe, before we head out to Asia over the New Year. So we have a month out and about there. Australia. Also excited about a couple of new countries adding to the list, which is now 63 countries for Mayhem conquered, and 2 more now coming in. Mainland China. We have played in Hong Kong before, so I kind of played China, but mainland China and Nepal. Never been in Nepal before.
Amazing. Some friends of mine played there with Napalm Death back in, I think, 2010 or 11, and they had a great response there. I think part of it was because they don't get many gigs, so I think you get a very good turnout there from what I know.
But I mean, I'm not surprised that you say that name, because it is that name. It is that band.
Right.
First it's Rolling Stones, then it's Metallica, and then it's Napalm Death, and then it's Mayhem. All of these other bands, they arrive in the country first. For some reason, you know.
Yeah.
Also, like Marduk, very surprising.
Yeah.
Have gotten up to 75 countries. And I thought that can't fucking be true. I met Morgan Håkonsen. I told him, like, you're bragging about this, like, let's break it down. And by fucking jolly, he had fucking played in 75 countries. It was just like these few countries that snuck away from us. It's like very few. It's like Iceland for some reason. Of course, the small countries like Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Andorra, Monaco. We haven't played there. There's a couple of countries in South America that we haven't played, but there's not a huge market. But I know all the bands who play there, so we have to do it. Nicaragua, Honduras, Venezuela, and one of the Caribbean countries, Dominican Republic. There is a scene there, and also Cuba. Basically, that's it. Panama, Nicaragua. Did I mention that? The rest we played. The same in Asia. We only miss out now Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia. The rest we have done. Well, except Mongolia. We had an offer to play in Mongolia. We had to turn it down, but now we know it's a festival there. So
cool. And
those countries I just mentioned now, I don't expect to play in Monaco or the Vatican State, for that matter. So there will be some countries, and also, some countries who has a metal scene. We want to go there, especially if they have Mayhem fans. Enough fans to cover the expense that we get over there, the flights, and the hotels and shit, and then maybe a little fee, So, and this is what I get a kick out of these days. I'm calling it conquering the world. And there's some goals that has to be, so I'm hungry. I'm still hungry for it. So it's coming to a new country. It's like so, what is the word? It's so great in so many ways. It's like, for us who have been to so many places so many times, sometimes I think to myself, aren't they getting enough now? Do they really want to come back? We just been there. We got a new offer again? What the fuck's up with these people, But when you go to other countries that have never seen this before, it's the opposite way around, And we have everything to gain, we never played there, And also, there could be a surprise. Maybe that country was the best country for Mayhem. But of course, hardly likely, because there's a reason we haven't played there before, obviously.
Well, now I'm going to tell you this, right? As you were telling this, and I realized one thing, because I've spoken to Morgan about a lot of the countries that obviously those guys played as well, and they've been basically like everywhere. There's one country that, the countries that I've played in total, or my band has played, we're barely just scratching 2-digit numbers. But there's one country that we've played that none of you guys have, and that's Iran. Yeah. And what it also makes me think is that I've played Mayhem in Iran live before you did, but I'm sure that certainly someday, hopefully, you will finally get the chance to do that, because you will have lots and lots of people over there wanting to watch you guys.
We would be I would go in a heartbeat if that was possible to play there. That would be amazing. Iran, highly educated people, modern society and everything. There's nothing that stands in the way. We have shitloads of fans there. There's millions and millions of people living there. There's absolutely no reason for us to not play there. We played in Dubai, which was great, except, Dubai. There's not so many of those cheeks walking around, into Mayhem. Actually, most of the people who came to the show was people like yourself.
Yep.
That had to flee their own country to come to Dubai, which is a little bit more liberated, by a liberal Muslim country. So there were people from Kuwait, there was people from Saudi Arabia, there was people from Pakistan. All the nearby countries, they were coming to the concert and flew into the concert.
That's right. And I think same with when you played Turkey as well. I think there was a lot of Iranians who went to those shows as well. When you played in, I think, Istanbul, maybe not too long ago, actually.
Yeah. No, actually, wasn't that the story of that Nikam guy that he went to a show in Turkey and that was it? Couldn't return?
It might have been. That was. I don't know. Yeah, that might have been the case. That's happened multiple times actually. It happened to this girl I know as well. And then she ended up having a thrash band in France, and yeah, it's examples like that. But hopefully when we don't have a fucking Islamic bullshit government in the future, then you guys would be more than welcome to go. I'll go back. I haven't been back there for 10 years, but I would love to go back and play this again and share it with
it's a
people.
fucked up thing, like when the politics fucks up for normal business, like playing concerts and stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, not to say that your civilization is thousands years of, like how to say that, why is that right and not right, or
yeah, sure.
But how to look at it, like we played 63 countries, more than 75. Why the hell wouldn't Iran be one of them? If you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that means that they are different, right? So don't come here and say that they are not different. Of course they're different. They're different from all the other 75 countries. Yeah, obviously. So it's not on us. It's like you said. But I think because of the Iranian people, and I know like they focus on educating people and stuff, that at some point there's going to be, probably not the Mayhem fans, but they're going to be there as well. All the people who are going to revolt in the end and say, why the fuck are all the people going to see Kylie Minogue or whatever, like why the fuck, we had it,
Absolutely.
And that's with everything, the books, movies, music, art, fucking, and not to talk about the women's rights and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And the thing is, people are familiar with those things, okay? Mayhem tapes and all these things have been around for years. It's just that they can't be publicly expressed, but we will get there. We will get there. And
we know. So, I cross my fingers, but there is an end in the end. So, I mean, you better get your shit together. I mean, I would think, I hope to celebrate the 50th year and then go on a massive tour. But, I mean, I don't know what kind of shape we're going to be in.
Yeah. Well, maybe not having 2 bottles of wine on the plane might help, but,
Start with, maybe just start with a cup of coffee and, take it from there.
There you go. There you go. That's it. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you so fucking much coming on the podcast here and having a chat with us. Just like I said, longtime fan, and you've shaped up a lot of what we've done. And, and I think that what you do maybe matters than sometimes you get to see it on a day-to-day basis. But best of luck with the 40-year anniversary tours.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you all again in the UK at some point soon, if not elsewhere.
Yeah. We'll come into the UK in December, so... So we'll see you then, I guess.
Amazing, man. We will do. And and to everyone else listening to the podcast as well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.